Captain Kim stood rigid in the stark white council chamber, her back straight despite the crushing pressure of representing all humanity. The blue-tinted hologram of Tael, with its 8 spindly limbs and compound eyes that reflected light like oil on water, towered before her. Kim's palms were sweaty inside her formal gloves as she watched 17 different alien species, each stranger than the last, observe Earth's invitation ceremony. The room was filled with beings from across the galaxy. Some floated in special atmospheric tanks, others stood on multiple legs, and a few seemed to be made of living crystal. The air smelled faintly of cinnamon and ozone, the environmental systems working overtime to create a breathable atmosphere for all present. "Your species has achieved the minimum technological threshold," Tile announced, the translator converting the clicks and whistles of its natural speech. Each movement of its mandibles sent small shivers down Kim's spine. "Though we must acknowledge, your development is rudimentary compared to Council standards." Kim maintained her diplomatic smile, but her jaw tightened. 6 months of training for first contact hadn't prepared her for the thinly veiled condescension in Tail's tone. Around her, the human delegation shifted uncomfortably. Dr. Han clutched his datapad so tightly his knuckles had gone white, while Communications Officer Jun seemed to be biting the inside of his cheek to keep from speaking out of turn. Admiral Park, a veteran of 3 wars on Earth and now humanity's military representative, leaned slightly toward Kim. Her breath was warm against Kim's ear as she whispered, "They think we're children." Kim gave a nearly imperceptible nod. The Admiral wasn't wrong. These aliens, with their faster-than-light travel, their energy weapons, their gravity manipulation, viewed humans as technological infants who had just stumbled onto the galactic stage. Tail's upper limbs made a flowing gesture that the cultural briefings had identified as their equivalent of benevolent condescension. "The Council will provide guidance as you integrate. Your world will require significant protection until you advance further." Protection. The word hung in the air. Earth had built a united space fleet of over 200 ships, the pride of humanity, and these aliens spoke of protecting them as if they were helpless. "We appreciate the Council's concern," Kim replied carefully, knowing her words would be studied by human analysts for decades to come. Earth looks forward to learning from the collective wisdom of galactic civilization. The ceremony continued for another hour. Pledges of cooperation, explanations of Council procedures, assignments of diplomatic quarters. All the while, Kim noticed how the other species spoke around the humans rather than to them. A representative from a gaseous species called the Vrel even asked Tael if the new ones could comprehend abstract spatial concepts, while Kim stood right there. Finally, the formal proceedings ended. The human delegation was escorted to their temporary quarters, a suite of rooms hastily adapted to Earth-standard gravity and atmosphere. The door had barely closed behind them when everyone began talking at once. "Did you see how they looked?" "At us," Officer Jun paced the room. "Like we're some kind of interesting pets they've adopted." Dr. Han was already unpacking his analysis equipment. "Their technology is at least 3 centuries beyond our most advanced theoretical models. The energy signature from just their illumination systems could power all of Seoul for a year." Admiral Park threw her formal cap onto a chair. "They've assigned us a protection detail. I checked the specs. 2 of their ships will be guarding Earth, 2 ships to do what our entire fleet supposedly can't." Captain Kim moved to the window, gazing out at the stunning view of the Council station. It stretched for kilometers in every direction, a marvel of engineering that made the International Space Station look like a child's toy by comparison. Ships of impossible designs drifted past, some organic-looking, others purely geometric. "They've already decided who we are," she said quietly. "What we're capable of, what we'll never achieve." The room fell silent as the others turned to her. "They think they know us because they've seen our technology," Kim continued. "They measure advancement by faster engines and bigger weapons. But they don't understand human ingenuity," finished Dr. Lee, speaking for the first time since the ceremony. The older scientist had been silently observing everything with wise eyes. Now she looked up, a subtle smile forming on her weathered face. "Precisely," Kim nodded. Our entire history is filled with examples of humans overcoming overwhelming odds, adapting to impossible situations, finding unconventional solutions. Lee's smile widened. They have no idea what humans are capable of, do they? Kim turned back to the window, watching an enormous ship drift past, elegant and powerful. For now, humanity would play the role expected of them, the grateful newcomers eager to learn. They would absorb every bit of knowledge the Council offered, study every technology they could access, and they would prepare. Because sooner or later, the galaxy would discover what Earth had always known: never underestimate humans when their backs are against the wall. 3 months after Earth's admission to the Council, life aboard the orbital station had fallen into an uneasy routine. Humans worked alongside alien technicians, learning, observing, and carefully noting everything they could. The initial wonder had faded into a determined focus as Earth's representatives realized just how far behind they truly were. Captain Kim was reviewing training protocols with Admiral Park when the first alarm shattered the quiet. A high-pitched wail that made her teeth hurt, followed by flashing red lights that bathed the command center in an eerie glow. "What's happening?" Kim shouted over the noise as alien crew members rushed to their stations. The universal translators struggled to keep up with the sudden burst of different languages. Officer Song burst through the doorway, her usual composed demeanor replaced by barely controlled panic. She slid into her seat at the tactical display, fingers already moving across the holographic controls. "The Vraks have broken through defensive lines in the Proxima sector," she reported, not looking up from the screen where red warning indicators were multiplying by the second. "They've targeted Earth as their next conquest." The air in the room seemed to freeze. Every human present knew about the Vraks. They'd been briefed during their second week. A warrior species that had remained outside Council politics for centuries, emerging occasionally to conquer worlds before retreating back to their territory. The briefing had described them as methodical, ruthless, and undefeated. "Show me," ordered Admiral Park, moving to stand behind Song's chair. The tactical display shifted to show a three-dimensional map of nearby space. Dozens of red markers moved in perfect formation through what had once been Council defensive positions. The display zoomed out further, showing the calculated trajectory directly toward Earth. "How long?" asked Kim, her voice steady despite the cold fear settling in her stomach. "At their current speed, 4 days," Song replied. "Maybe 5 if they stop to secure Proxima Station first." General Bay, who had been quietly observing from the corner, stepped forward. "We need to contact the Council immediately. Their defense pact should trigger automatic support." Within minutes, the large screen at the front of the command center flickered to life. Council Representative Tile appeared, but instead of the usual crisp hologram, the image was distorted and breaking up, a sign they were communicating across vast distances during an emergency. "We've received your distress call," Tile began. Without preamble, the usual diplomatic niceties abandoned in crisis. "The situation is most unfortunate." "Unfortunate?" echoed Bay, his voice dangerously quiet. "The Vraks are heading straight for Earth with what looks like half their fleet. We need the Council's defense forces now." There was a pause that stretched too long before Tal responded. "I regret to inform you that our forces are committed to defending more established worlds. We cannot divert significant resources to Earth at this time." The room fell silent except for the continuing alarm. Even the alien crew members looked uncomfortable, avoiding eye contact with their human counterparts. "You're saying you won't help us?" Kim asked, stepping forward. "Not won't. Cannot," Tal corrected. Compound eyes shifting in what the humans had learned was discomfort. The Vraks launched simultaneous attacks on 3 core worlds. The Council's military forces are stretched beyond capacity. General Bay slammed his fist on the table, causing the holographic display to flicker. "You're abandoning us? After all your talk about protection and integration?" "This attack was unanticipated," Tal replied. "The Vraks have never struck so boldly before. We believed Earth would be safe due to its peripheral location." "And now?" pressed Admiral Park. The image of Tal flickered again, breaking up momentarily, before stabilizing. When the alien spoke again, its voice carried a tone the translator rendered as regretful. "Your defensive capabilities are limited," Tal said, but your species shows potential. But against the Vraks—" The alien hesitated, mandibles clicking softly. "Well, good luck." The screen went dark. For a long moment nobody moved. The implications were clear. Earth was on its own. "They've written us off," whispered Officer Song, staring at the tactical display where the red dots continued their inexorable approach. "Toward Earth." "Good luck," repeated Dr. Lee from the doorway where she had apparently been standing during the entire exchange. "That's all they can offer. Good luck against an enemy they themselves fear." General Bay turned to address the room, his face set in grim determination. "Contact Earth immediately. All military forces on high alert. Recall every ship in training exercises." "Fate won't be enough," said one of the alien technicians, breaking protocol to speak directly. "I've seen what the Vraks do to worlds they conquer. Your defenses cannot stop them." Kim looked at the alien, a four-armed being named Zril, who had been one of the few friendly faces during their time at the station. "Then help us. Your people have fought them before." Zril's skin flushed a deep orange, their species' indication of distress. "The Council has ordered all non-essential personnel to evacuate this sector. My transport leaves in 2 hours." "So that's it?" Park's voice cut through the room. "Everyone just runs and leaves Earth to fend for itself?" The silence that followed was answer enough. "Fine," said Kim finally, straightening her uniform. "Let them go. Admiral, we need to get back to Earth immediately. If we have 5 days, we'll use every minute." As the human delegation rushed to prepare for emergency departure, Dr. Lee lingered behind, studying the tactical display with narrowed eyes. "They think they're being kind," she murmured, "giving us a dignified goodbye." "What do you mean?" asked Kim, pausing at the door. Lee's lips curved into that same knowing smile she'd worn 3 months earlier. "They've never seen humans with their backs against the wall. They have no idea what we're about to become." The observation deck of Earth's hastily assembled defense headquarters buzzed with activity. Screens flickered with data streams, while communication officers relayed orders to the scattered human fleet. The air smelled of coffee and sweat, evidence of 3 sleepless days preparing for the Vraks' arrival. Council observer Nesh hadn't planned to stay. The tall, reed-thin alien with silvery skin had been ordered to evacuate with the others. But curiosity, a trait his species valued above all else, had compelled him to remain, observing what most of the galaxy assumed would be humanity's last stand. Now he stood transfixed before the main tactical display, his elongated fingers pressed against his mouth in what humans had learned was his species' expression of utter confusion. "They're doing what?" he asked, turning to Commander Han, who stood beside him, dark circles under her eyes but a fierce energy in her movements. Han couldn't help but grin as she explained, pointing to the southern section of Earth's orbital defense network. "We call it playing possum. The Vraks think our southern defense grid is offline due to battle damage, but we've actually reconfigured it as a trap." Nesh blinked his large, pupilless eyes. "You deliberately appear weak. This contradicts all established military doctrine." "That's exactly why it will work," Han replied, taking a sip from her 5th cup of coffee. "The Vraks have conquered 17 worlds. They expect certain responses, certain patterns." The main screen showed the approaching Vraks fleet, 60 warships, in perfect diamond formation, their black hulls absorbing light rather than reflecting it. They had already destroyed the 2 Council protection ships without slowing down. Now they approached Earth's orbit, their scanners probing the planet's defenses. Han watched the lead ships adjust their trajectory, precisely as predicted. "They're taking the bait." The Vraks fleet began to concentrate their forces toward the southern approach, where human defenses appeared weakest. What they couldn't detect was that the damaged satellites had been reprogrammed into massive electromagnetic pulse generators, while seemingly abandoned orbital platforms contained squadrons of small fighter craft with their power signatures masked. "Now," Han said quietly into her comm unit. The southern defense grid erupted. Blinding pulses of electromagnetic energy washed over the lead Vraks ships, temporarily disabling their systems. Simultaneously, the hidden fighter squadrons launched, swarming the larger ships like angry bees. Nesh stepped back from the display, his silver skin shifting to a pale blue of astonishment. This is unorthodox. This is just the beginning, Han replied, watching as the Vrax formation began to break apart, responding to the unexpected attack. The tactical display split to show ground operations as the first Vrax landing parties. Breached atmosphere. Earth's militaries had prepared for this inevitability. No one believed they could prevent all landings. But rather than meeting the invaders with traditional defensive lines, Colonel Moon had prepared something different. Moon's hologram appeared in the command center, transmission coming from somewhere in the forests of what had once been North Korea. They've landed strike teams across Asia and Europe, he reported, the sounds of distant explosions punctuating his words. Proceeding with Operation Quicksand. The display showed Vrax ground forces, 9-foot-tall armored figures moving, in perfect synchronization, advancing through urban areas and open countryside alike. But everywhere they went, they encountered no main resistance force. Instead, small teams of human fighters appeared and disappeared, striking from unexpected angles, using the environment against the invaders. In Seoul, they flooded the subway, tunnels after luring a Vrax battalion inside, Han explained to Nesh. In London, they used construction equipment to collapse buildings onto their dropships. In Mumbai, they released zoo animals to disrupt their sensor patterns. Nesh watched as a particularly effective ambush unfolded in real time. A Vrax unit advanced down what appeared to be an empty highway, only to have the road itself collapse. Beneath them, the concrete having been carefully pre-cut and weakened. Your tactics lack traditional formation and structure, Nesh observed, his tone somewhere between criticism and wonder. It's chaotic. Unpredictability is our advantage, Han replied without taking her eyes off the display. The Vrax fight by the book. We throw the book out the window. Another screen showed a civilian news broadcast that had somehow remained operational. A reporter stood before a makeshift workshop where ordinary people converted farming equipment into weapons and everyday chemicals into explosives. The Vrax have never faced this kind of resistance, Nesh said, more to himself than to Han. They expect surrender or organized military response, not this. Han nodded. Humans have been fighting each other for thousands of years. We've learned a thing or two about asymmetric warfare. The main display suddenly flashed with new alerts. The Vrax command ship was changing position, pulling back from the direct assault. Their perfect formation had dissolved into scattered groups trying to respond to threats from all directions. They're regrouping, noted Han, trying to establish a new strategy. Nesh's fingers danced over his own datapad, recording observations. To transmit back to the Council. Their species has no concept of improvisation. Their military training emphasizes perfect execution of established protocols. This chaos is outside their experience. A communication officer rushed over to Han. Commander, we're picking up transmissions between Vrax ships. They're calling for reinforcements. Han's tired face broke into a genuine smile. They expected to take Earth in hours. It's been 3 days and they're asking for help. Across the room, Admiral Park entered with Captain Kim and Dr. Lee in tow. Their expressions were grim but determined as they joined Han and Nesh at the tactical display. Phase 1 has exceeded expectations, Park announced. The Vrax are confused, separated, and their landing parties are bogged down in endless small engagements. Now for Phase 2, added Kim. Dr. Lee, the older scientist, stepped forward, tapping commands that brought up schematics of a Vrax warship. We've analyzed the debris from their damaged vessels. Their communication systems have a vulnerability we can exploit. Nesh leaned forward, his scientific curiosity piqued. You've had time to reverse engineer alien technology while fighting a war? Dr. Lee gave him a sideways glance. Young man, I was designing quantum computers while you were still swimming in your parents' spawning pool. Human scientists work very well under pressure. As the group discussed the next phase of Earth's defense, Nesh couldn't help but marvel at these strange beings. The Council had dismissed humans as primitive, unready for galactic politics, yet here they were, holding their own against the Vrax, through sheer adaptability and creative thinking. Perhaps he thought as he watched Commander Han direct the next wave of unconventional attacks, the Council had been measuring advancement by entirely the wrong metrics all along. 2 weeks into what the galaxy had expected to be a quick conquest, Earth's defense headquarters had transformed. What began as a desperate last stand had evolved into something the Council had never seen before, a successful resistance against the Varax. The observation deck now hosted a growing number of alien officials who had arrived to witness the impossible. Chief Science Officer Jewel of the Council floated in his anti-gravity harness, his 6 eyes blinking in rapid succession as he reviewed the specifications on the screen before him. His tentacles, usually a calm blue, had turned almost white with shock. "Impossible," he muttered, the universal translator catching the vibrations from his speech sac. "You've weaponized our atmospheric regulators?" Engineer Choi stood beside him, dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, her hands stained with machine oil and her uniform rumpled from days without proper rest. She nodded matter-of-factly, as though they were discussing a minor software update rather than a revolutionary weapons system. "We repurposed the gravitational stabilizers to create localized singularities," she explained, pointing to a schematic that showed modified Council technology. "Makes for an effective ship-to-ship weapon, but these were designed for environmental control," protested Jewel, his tentacles writhing in agitation. "To help terraform worlds over decades, the power core was never intended to be overcharged and focused into a precision cutting beam." Choi finished for him, allowing herself a small smile. "Yeah, we figured that out about 4 days ago. We've installed them on our remaining orbital platforms." Jewel's anti-gravity harness bobbed slightly as he struggled to process this information. "Your species has had access to this technology for less than 3 months. It takes our engineers years to fully understand a new system before attempting modifications." Choi shrugged. "We were in a hurry." Across the war room, the atmosphere was equally charged with unexpected developments. Ambassador Yoon sat at a communication station, her formal diplomatic attire long since replaced by a practical jumpsuit, her usually perfect hair now hastily pinned up. On multiple screens before her, representatives from species that had previously declared neutrality in the Vrax conflict were now engaging in rapid negotiations. "The Krell Confederation agrees to your terms," announced one reptilian being, its scales shifting from green to gold to indicate formal agreement. "Our medical ships will arrive within 12 hours. In exchange, we request priority access to the defensive shield technology you've developed." "Granted," Yoon replied without hesitation. "Send your technical team with the medical ships. We'll begin information transfer immediately." As the reptilian's image disappeared, another alien face filled the screen, this one gaseous and contained within a specialized communication orb. "The Mist Collective remains concerned about Vrax retaliation if we openly support Earth," the being pulsed. Yoon leaned forward, her expression firm but not unkind. 3 days ago, a human fighter squadron destroyed a Vrax heavy cruiser using technology we developed last week. The Vrax are no longer invincible. The galaxy is changing." She paused, letting her words sink in. "You can either change with it or be left behind." The gaseous being swirled thoughtfully before responding. "We will provide the requested star charts and Vrax tactical information, but our support remains covert for now." "Understood," Yoon nodded. "Every bit helps." She terminated the connection and immediately began preparing for her next negotiation. What had started as desperate pleas for help had transformed into strategic alliances. Earth's unexpected resistance had created leverage that Yoon, a seasoned diplomat, was exploiting masterfully. Meanwhile, beyond Earth's atmosphere, the first true counter-offensive was underway. The hastily retrofitted human vessel Daedalus, under Captain Doe's command, led a mixed fleet of human ships and a few council vessels that had arrived as reinforcements now that Earth was proving itself worthy of support. Inside the Daedalus command bridge, Captain Doe stood before a 3-dimensional tactical display, directing his fleet with hand gestures that the ship's AI translated into orders. His eyes never left the representation of the massive Vrax command vessel they were approaching. "Maintain Formation Delta until my mark," he ordered, his voice calm despite the tension evident in his posture. "Remember, these patterns will make no sense to them. That's our advantage." The human ships moved in what appeared to be random paths, sometimes coming dangerously close to one another, before veering away at the last second. To an outside observer, it looked like chaos. To Do, it was a carefully choreographed dance based on ancient naval warfare tactics from Earth's history. "They're adjusting course to intercept our lead vessels," reported his tactical officer. "Exactly as you predicted, sir." Do nodded. "They think they understand our strategy. Now, execute phase." 2. The human fleet suddenly scattered in all directions, some ships accelerating to speeds that strained their engines, while others cut power entirely, drifting momentarily before re-engaging at unexpected angles. The Vrak's defensive fire, which had been tracking predictable trajectories, now hit empty space. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the Vrak's command ship," called out the communications officer, surprise evident in her voice. "They want to talk?" Do raised an eyebrow, but nodded. "On screen." The main display flickered to show a Vrak's commander, a towering figure with armored exoskeleton and multiple compound eyes arranged around a central head. The universal translator worked to convert the clicking, hissing language. "Your tactics are not recognized in the grand combat histories," the Vrak stated without preamble. "They follow no strategic doctrine." Do allowed himself a small smile. "That's the point." The Vrak's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of agitation according to the brief cultural files the Council had provided. "Your ships move without coordination. You expose your flanks, you advance and retreat without securing positions. And yet," Du replied calmly, "we're winning." As if to emphasize his point, a series of explosions bloomed silently in space, as Engineer Choi's modified gravitational weapons activated from Earth's orbital platforms, catching the rear of the Vrak's fleet in their deadly fields. The Vrak's commander's next transmission seemed to contain genuine confusion. "They're adapting too quickly," he said, apparently broadcast to his entire fleet rather than just to Do. "These humans don't fight like any species we've encountered." Do terminated the connection with a gesture and turned to his bridge crew. "They're regrouping. Push forward with the next phase. Let's show them what else we can do." As the human fleet pressed their advantage, back at Earth headquarters, Admiral Park and Captain Kim watched the battle unfold with cautious optimism. "It's working," Kim said quietly. "They don't know how to fight an enemy that doesn't follow established patterns." Park nodded, her experienced eyes tracking the movements on the display. "The Vrak's have spent centuries perfecting their strategies against opponents who think like they do. They've never faced humans before." From his observation post, Council observer Nesh had been joined by several other alien officials, all watching with varying degrees of astonishment, as humans, supposedly primitive humans, drove back the undefeated Vrak's forces. "Perhaps," Nesh said thoughtfully, "we have been measuring advancement incorrectly all along. Perhaps adaptability, creativity, and unpredictability are more valuable than we realized." As Captain Doe's fleet pressed their advantage, forcing the Vrak's command ship into retreat, a new feeling spread through Earth's headquarters. Not just hope, but something they hadn't dared feel since the invasion began. The first taste of victory. The emergency meeting room went quiet. Everyone's eyes were fixed on the holographic display, showing the massive enemy fleet slowly moving away from our solar system. Years of conflict had led to this moment, a turning point that nobody expected. One of the senior leaders stood up, looking around at the gathered representatives from different worlds. His voice was calm, but carried a weight of importance. "I suggest we give humans the leadership role in our new defense team," he proposed. "Their strange and unexpected ways of solving problems have been nothing short of remarkable." Another representative immediately pushed back. "They're practically babies in space technology. Their ships are so basic compared to what we've developed over centuries. How can they possibly lead anything?" The first speaker didn't miss a beat. "True, their technology looks primitive. But they did something none of us could. They defeated an enemy that had been terrorizing multiple star systems. What we saw as weakness might actually be their greatest strength." He continued explaining how humans approach challenges differently. They don't get stuck in traditional thinking. When faced with a problem, they look at it from angles that others would never consider. Their ability to adapt, to think creatively, to find solutions outside standard protocols, These are their real superpowers. The room listened intently. The debate was shifting. What seemed impossible just moments ago was now becoming a real possibility. When the final vote was taken, it was unanimous. Humans would lead the new defense coalition, a decision that would change everything. The military leader accepting this responsibility didn't show much emotion, just a slight, knowing smile. He understood the immense trust being placed in humanities. And soon, a new saying started spreading across different star systems. Need a predictable solution? Ask the established experts. But if you're facing something that seems impossible, find a human and wish their opponents good luck. It was more than just a catchy phrase. It represented a fundamental shift in how advanced civilizations viewed humanity. No longer were they seen as the newest, most inexperienced species. Now they were recognized as innovative problem solvers, with an uncanny ability to turn seemingly hopeless situations around. The story of how humans became galactic defenders was just beginning, and everyone knew it would be anything but ordinary. This version maintains the core narrative while using simple conversational language. It focuses on human adaptability and creativity, keeping the tone engaging and natural. The text avoids complex technical jargon and concentrates on the human perspective of this extraordinary moment.